Hello. So it's Emma here. I thought I'd give an update on my Christmas city to city attempt run. Spoiler alert, I did not finish. So in terms of preparation, I did a marathon per month, including one ultra marathon, in the 3 months leading up, so that I had a focused effort to remain accountable at least once a month. And I was also doing long runs once a week at the weekend, and on some occasions I do back to back, in which I do a marathon on one day and a fell race the next day, so that I had the experience of running on really tired legs. And one killer was actually doing a fell race on the Saturday and then a marathon the next day. Great prep. Apart from that, I was doing weights twice a week. I was cycling to work about 4 times a week, so I was getting cross training in, and I was also trying to incorporate walking up hills now and again. So that was the prep. The other prep, psychologically, I completed 100 milers before. I made sure that I had the right kit with me. I don't think I would have added or taken away anything that I did in that respect. I also planned to take snacks with me for the first day, because I realised that there basically weren't going to be many shops open. And that transpired to be the case pretty much where I needed to have traditionally have picked up the snacks. Then I had the snacks available to draw on. So that side of the prep was fab. I made sure that I had in my mind where I'd be picking up the water. That was prep. That was fine as well. And I made sure that I had all my general, what I call mountain craft, in that I would take an additional lightweight puffer in case that if I needed to slow down or stop, I could put that on. So there was that prep as well. And I also took a foil bivvy, first aid kit, spare head torch, and 2 battery packs. So I was good to go. On the day before the event, news came through that there'd be a yellow wind forecast with gusts of between 45 and 50 miles an hour. That was unexpected, because the weather forecast beforehand hadn't been that horrific, and I was very anxious over the fact that after 25 miles of my planned route, I would knock on the door of the Severn Bridge, and I double checked their website in that they would only close off the walkway if there was an extreme weather event or if there was maintenance ongoing, so that if they did change access to the main carriageway, then you still had the walkway available. So I'd done that prep as well. I'd also prepped by booking a coach about 2.5 days after the start down in London, so I had a means of getting home. I also had a bailout plan in that my partner would pick me up Boxing Day or on the 27th if I didn't quite make it. So those were all of the planning things that I had in place. I thought that my plans were bomb-proof. The weather was the biggie, and it was unexpected. And that was my downfall. Because whilst I'm fairly hard and I've got a lot of character about me, I'm also aware that if you put your body under so much stress, and you expose it to too much cold, you're at risk of hypothermia. Anyway, more of that as I go on the blurb. So I started out from Cardiff Castle just before 9 o'clock on Saturday morning. Very clear conditions, but very blowy, very cold. I think it was in the region of 2 degrees on the car thermometer, and with the wind chill it would have been well below that again. And certainly in those initial stages I was trogging along quite steadily. I wasn't going mad, because the worst thing you could do is try and bank miles at the start of a really, really long distance race. So I was trogging along okay. For instance, going up through Rumney, where I encountered the first minor steep incline, then I was walking so that I can conserve my energy, and things were going well. My nutrition plan was okay, fluids okay, taking everything on board. It was just feeling a bit chilly. Now, I've done fell races in the past, long fell races when I've got really cold, and it wasn't really as bad as this, and I knew that that it was cold. So I had my long leggings that I'd chosen. I had my waterproof on the top. I had my hat on, my buff. I had a long sleeve layer underneath, and I was trogging along okay. What I did notice at this, probably not quite this point, was that as I was going through Cardiff, then there are 1 or 2 more shops open than I expected. So they were very, very local corner shops. But at that stage, I had plenty of nutrition on board in my backpack, so I was fine in that respect. I came out of Rumney, and then went out into what I suppose you could describe as the green belt before Newport. And as I was going through, very clear day, sunshine was beating, well, sunshine, brightness. Yeah, I can't call it heat because it wasn't heat, but again, quite blowy, and I was choosing conservatively which side of the road I was running on so that it could minimise wind chill. And so I was going fine through the outskirts of Newport, past Tredegar House, nutrition, fluids going down well, and I went through Dovrin by Tredegar House, making my way into the outskirts of Newport, and then coming in towards the centre of Newport and across George Street Bridge, which I'm not actually sure I've ever been across George Street Bridge before, because I've had no need. So then I was coming down into George Street Bridge, into Maindy, still okay, blight conditions, buoyed up by the prospect that I was going through somewhere that I'd recognised, and I'd jogged through before. I'd jogged through Maindy before, jogged through Chepstow Road, which was the way out of Newport before. and I was faring well, I'd walk at the harder inclines, then I'd walk for a little bit, but there wasn't too much of that going on that stage because it was a very, very gentle incline up Chepstow Road. And then I reached the Cauldre, which I had in my mind that I'd pick up some more water there. And so I went into the entrance, and there were like about 5 staff members about to welcome people in for their Christmas meals, because it was literally just before lunchtime at that point. And I said, "Oh, sorry, would you mind if I just popped into the loo?" And I actually sat down on a real loo, as it were, for the last time in my trip. Because other than that, that was just typical wild toileting after that, as it were, because there was nowhere open. And I refilled one of my water bottles, all good, and then headed off back out along Chepstow Road, down through Cauldre, and then I was under the M4, passed through Langstone, fine. I was walking up some of the Langstone Hill, where it was getting pretty steep. That was all fine. Nutrition going down, fluids going down, fine. It was feeling nippy. As the farther I went out through the Newport conurbation, the more the wind chill was hitting in again. So as I was coming out Langsdown and out towards the road, particularly towards Crick, I walked up that big long hill because it was just not economical to be running up there. Came out the other side, very bright at that point. What I would say on is that when I did the Arc, a piece of essential winter kit was these clear wraparound safety glasses, and I was so thankful for having them that day because of the wind chill, because otherwise, quite genuinely, my eyeballs would have frozen or would have been extremely painful. And reports that I've read back, particularly from the Arc, is that if you expose your eyes into sub-zero conditions for long enough, then you can have temporary blindness, which no run's worth that, is it? I don't think so. So anyway, continued along the Chepstow Road, trogging away, nutrition fine, fluids fine, and then I noticed that my battery was going down unusually. 2 factors here. That the Live 360 beacon tracker that I hadn't really tried or tested before to some huge degree on huge long runs was chewing up a lot of my battery, but also the cold was getting the battery. And so I plugged in the first of my backup power banks, and what I found was even that was going down more than expected. And I'd done some chilly runs in the past, but even that was getting chewed up pretty quickly as well. So I thought, oh, flipping heck. So anyway, I switched off the tracker outside San Pierre Golf Hotel complex, and then I was in towards the outskirts of the outer Chepstow area. I was passing through the industrial estates and then heading up on to the start of the Severn Bridge, and hallelujah, the walkway was open. So I was like, oh wow, because I had a backup plan of phoning up Leonie, and I told her, don't drink on Christmas Day until I've had it confirmed that the walkway's open. And so I messaged her hurriedly saying the walkway's open, and she said yay. And so over the bridge I went, and by God, I could see why the traffic had been banned that day. Yeah, major gusts. I just literally hugged The southern walkway, I daren't go on the northern walkway because you'd just be battered. So I went on the southern walkway, and I was literally hugging as close as I could to the beams and those metal, like those huge metal wires that they have by the edge of the carriageway. So I was like hugging that as close as possible because I didn't want to be anywhere near that fence. Because I took one look below in that river and I thought, okay, as much as I love colder water swimming and dipping, I don't want to go in that today because I'd end up off in Ilkeston or somewhere like that, or Clevedon at this rate. So I was like hugging, and I was still getting buffeted in the wind. I was like, oh my god. And I felt really quite cold at that point. And I was very, very grateful when I finished the old Severn Bridge, went up and across to all services. Now, I didn't realise that the main building is now converted to some kind of children's play area. I didn't know that. So all that was open to me was the BP garage. And I went in and I got a sandwich, which cost me, what, $3.99 for 2 pieces of bread with cheese and pickle in it. I'll let you make your own decision whether that's a fair price for a sandwich, but that's sort of the option I had available to me. And I bought some orange club biscuits because I love them, and they were dirt cheap on the shelf. So I had them as a back pocket snack for later on in the day. But there was nowhere really that I can fill up my water bottles. So I asked him, do you have a water tap? One of those water taps for the cars? So he said, yeah, but it's for the cars. Yeah, he was a bit kind of grumpy, and which, to be fair, if you'd had not much custom on Christmas Day and you were there on Christmas Day and not much was happening, then I think I'd be pretty cheesed off, to be fair. So I went around the back, checked out the water tap, and I squeezed it out, and it was blue in colour, and then I realised, screen wash. So I thought, oh, that's not going to work, is it? I don't fancy drinking screen wash. That's not on the agenda. So to the left of me was Travel Lodge, so I scrambled up this very, very steep bank into the Travel Lodge, and I went in. Lovely and warm inside the reception. Oh my god, lovely, lovely, lovely. And there was this young chap, I bet he was like 18, 19, there on a Christmas Day. I said, hiya, can I ask a favour of you? Can I fill up my water bottles because I can't find anywhere locally that's open? And so he said, yeah, that's fine. Oh, and bless him, he went behind the scenes and he filled up my water bottles and he held them open whilst I put my little electrolyte tablets. Such a gem. And then when I was putting the tops on them, some of the water spilled out, and so he had to mop the floor, and he brought out his mop. It was such a gem. So I said, thank you very much, that's awesome, you've really helped me on my way. And so I went off out of there and then down in towards the road that goes to Thornbury, and then you peel off towards Ulverston, which I used to cycle around there all the time when I used to live in Bristol, so I knew that area quite well. So I'm walking up the steeper ascents, including up Washingpool Hill, which is a bit of a bugger. And then I was up onto the main Gloucester Road. Over there towards Lattridge, Earthcott, and heading out towards Yate. And by that point, the sun was going down and it started to get really cold. The wind hadn't let up at all, and it was just crushing. It was just crushing. And at one point I had to put my waterproof bottoms on because it just got so cold. And I came into the outskirts of Yate and I was thinking, is there anywhere open for food? And there was one 24-hour petrol station. I thought, oh god, I can't have another $3.99 sandwich, spare me, seriously. And so I went on, and halfway through Yates, I found the garage next to Tesco's. So Tesco's was closed, obviously, because it's Christmas Day. But the garage was open, and my God, it was lovely and warm. Lovely and warm. So I had a very big faff in there, faffing, sorting myself and what have you. Unfortunately, they had the same range of sandwiches, but they were about a quid cheaper. So I got that. So I got my sandwich, so I got my tuna mayo, sweet corn sandwich. Started scoffing that, repacked my bags, and then I headed off out towards on the Chipping Sodbury Road. And I got about a couple of miles out, and I was just perishingly cold. I was just cold to my bones. It was just horrible. And so I took the decision to put on my lightweight puffer that I had in my bag, and that is something that I've kept for occasions, when, say, if I had to stop or I had an injury or something like that and I needed to keep warm whilst I was cold. It was never to be running with, and so I put it on, and I put my gloves back on, and it helped me warm up no end. And I was probably about 43, 44 miles in then by then, and where I was warming up, my hands had like pins and needles where they were starting to thaw out, and it was really painful, like seriously painful. I was like, oh, this is beyond. Anyway, I thought I'd be going through Chipping Sodbury, but it transpired that I must have been on a parallel road. And then I came upon Old Sodbury and thought, oh, I'm here. Okay, and then I was up a very, very steep side lane, up and over, down in towards the crossing, which goes up the A46, the road between the Bath turn off on the M4 up to Stroud. Over there, still moving very well. I went through Acton Turville, under the M4, to Burton, I think the Gib, the Upper Castle Coombe, but at that point I was just really cold again, despite having the lightweight puffer. And basically, for the last 5 miles, I was wearing every layer that I was carrying in my bag on, and I was just feeling the effects of being exposed to the cold. For the last, I'm trying to think how many hours that would be by that point, probably about 9-10 hours. So I'd had that cumulative effect, and at that point I was in Yatton Kano, and I started phoning Leonie saying, this is not my day. This is not my day. Unfortunately, she wasn't picking up. I don't know why. Perhaps it was phone reception or something. But I was phoning her for over an hour, saying I'd be, and I left messages saying that I'm probably going to be dropping out of Chippenham, which was another, 6 or 7 miles away, because I was so cold, and it was that cumulative effect. Finally got through, I think it was just after the village of Tiddlywink. Yes, there is a village called Tiddlywinks. And so I went through Tiddlywinks and then left onto the Bath Road that would invariably end up in Chippenham. And it was at that point that I made phone contact with my partner Leonie and said, okay, this is how it is. Cumulative effect of the cold. Don't think I'm actually going to make it. And she said, okay, what's your plans? So I was like, I don't really have a plan because I wasn't expecting to be dropping out at this stage. I was expecting to maybe experience trouble 100, 120, 130 miles in. I was never expecting it this early. Never expecting this early. And of course she'd been drinking on Christmas Day. So she said, well, I can't actually pick you up under drink driving rules until about 3 in the morning. Bear in mind that this is like 9:30, and I was like, oh, okay. Right, so I made it into Chippenham, and then what I did is I knew that there was a little park and sports centre area, so I curbed off into there, and I found this little side gully. I mean, I was looking for options as I was jogging along just off the main drag, and I was looking for options, maybe nipping in between hedges or something like that. But then I saw this perfect area. It was like a gully between two banks, quite enclosed, no wind at all, and it had ivy on the floor, it had leaves on the floor, and I thought, right, I'm just going to get in my foil bivvy blanket, and that's what I did, and I felt so much warmer, so much warmer. And I was doing okay for a couple of hours, and I was eating a lot of snacks, building up my energy levels again. I was even considering doing my Duolingo because it was getting towards 11:30 by that point, and Duolingo was going, "You've not done your practice today." And then in my contented snooze, I must have turned over and my foil bivvy split, and I thought, oh, it's feeling a bit chilly suddenly, and I looked over and went, oh God, you just couldn't make it up. So by that point, Leonie had already been saying, well, why don't you stay in Travelodge Premier? And I said, I can't, I literally cannot go on. It's safer for me at this stage to stay where I am in my foil bivvy, warm up and rest for a little bit. And I genuinely think that that was the right thing to do because that was my training. But unfortunately, this situation took a turn for the worst. And so then I was desperately looking at the Travelodge website, and I phoned up their customer service, said, if I just showed up now, and bear in mind this is like 5 to midnight, if I showed up now, can I just like pay on the door? Because the thought of having to, book in on their website would mean taking my hand out my glove and trying to put cold hands in like 0 temperature on my phone. Can I just rock up and just pay then? And he said no, because of security, you have to book beforehand. So then what I did is I had to go in on their website, book in, and put all my, name, address, phone number, whether you were leisure or business, and it was like, oh my life, seriously? And he'd said to me, you need to book before midnight and make sure it's the 25th of December, or else if it flips over to the 26th of December as today, then you'll be booking for tomorrow night, which is Boxing Day evening. So I had to basically book before midnight, so I was on a bit of a timeline, and so I went into the website, as I say, and I tried to book and I tried to pay, but the authentication wouldn't go through. I don't know why. So then I tried it again through a different website, and it seemed to work that second time. But the transaction went through at like 1 minute past midnight, but it said, yeah, all booked. So then I got out what was left of the foil blanket, and then just trundled on to the Travelodge, which was just over a mile away. I think I was on more of a trot than a walk. because it was absolutely bloody freezing. It was just sub-zero. Seriously, must have been -1 or something like that in the centre of Chippenham. Anyway, I was trotting through and I rocked up there and he said, "You look as though you've been running all day." So I said, "Yeah, I've been running from Cardiff." And he said, "Oh, fair play." And it just felt tropical inside the reception. It was absolutely tropical. So I got my key to my room upstairs, and I kept on my K-tape because, hallelujah, I saw a whole load of USB charging points, and I thought, actually, this is one of my big things, is that I didn't think that I would have enough power bank and power supply available to be able to recharge my head torches for night 2. So I thought that it was game over, but I charged up all my things overnight. I managed to get a couple of hours sleep, but I couldn't sleep very well at all. And then I woke up probably about 4. I was probably only asleep between 2 and 4 because I checked in about 1 in the morning in the end. So then in the morning I had a bit of a wash down, washed my hair because I could, but I kept on my K-tape because it takes half an hour to put all the K-tape on your toes and your feet and what have you. Patched up a couple of blisters that I didn't realise that I had until the morning when they were like, "Ooh, hot spots." And then I went out the door probably about 5:30. And the plan was, because there were no shops open at that stage in Chippenham, but there was an Asda local open in Calne from 6. So I knew that if I got to Calne, which was about 5.5 miles away, then I can use that shop to pick up supplies. Not that I needed too much, but I knew that the next step ahead afterwards would be going over the Wiltshire Down, and there's very little shops, cafes, what have you out there. There's just nothing. So anyway, I went out down past Pewsham, up the massive hill to Derry Hill, and down into Calne. And at that point, still really cold, still really windy. I mean, I was moving okay, but it was all a bit slow. And I was just thinking and reflecting, thinking, I'm starting to feel cold again. And I was moving quite slowly. And I thought, this is not sustainable. I'm going to end up getting hypothermia if I go on for a very long period of time. So all in all, I'd run about 65 miles. I got into Calne. I tried sitting in a bus shelter for the first 10 minutes, absolutely perishingly cold. So just outside the council offices there were some bushes, so I sat behind the bushes, put my rucksack over me, put on every layer that I had, put on a podcast and just huddled down for an hour. And quite kindly, Leonie picked me up at that point. And then that was it. So positives, absolutely fantastic prep. Everything went to plan. I was very grateful of all my previous mountain training, what to take, what to do if things go wrong, and something did go wrong, and I was fine. What else went well? Pacing was fine, didn't go out too quickly. I had it all in my head over where I may be able to get water from. Sometimes that worked out, and sometimes you have little things that you think that come you up a cropper, but not too much. What else worked out okay? Clothing was absolutely fine. What else? Training went well. I was pleased with the strength training, strength and conditioning that I'd done. speed endurance helped keep my pacing up at a fair level. Very pleased with the previous fell runs and hill walks that got me into being able to get up the steeper inclines more efficiently. Things that didn't go well, obviously, the weather. I can't change the weather. You just have to respect what the weather can do, and that's more about how you respond with your prior training and your mental outlook. And one other negative, I suppose, I don't know. I just think it's the weather. It was just the weather and the wind chill were just battering you, and it was the cumulative effect. It wasn't the fact that it was cold per se, it was just the cumulative effect, and it just knocked me for 6 after about 9 or 10 hours. So I like to think I'm quite hard, and I've done long fell races, I've done ultras in the past, including some in the winter. So it's not as though I didn't have the experience under my belt. But I'll live to fight another day. I have other runs that are in the calendar, and from now, as I normally do after all these big long runs, I usually have a good 2-3 months and just focusing on shorter stuff. I'll spend the next week or so recovering and then just focusing on shorter fell races, cross country, that kind of thing, and just working on my base speed and shorter events. I don't have any immediate plans to do any longer ultras at the moment. Nothing's in the calendar. The only main A race for me is the Welsh 1000 metre peaks race, but that's at the end of May, and that's about just under 20 miles with a hell of a lot of sun. So that's my A race for the next 6 months, and then after that, let's just see. I always say after these ultras, that'll be the last ultra I do. So I don't want to even say at this stage that'll be the last attempt at running to London, or that'll be the last attempt at running 150 miles, because I'd know in my head that that's baloney, because give it another month or so and you suddenly start thinking, what if? And when I started out training and doing the 100-mile distance, it took me 3 attempts, but I got there. And so I know that anything is achievable if you do the right prep, the right training, if you have the right mental outlook, if you have your tactics in place. But also you need to take these things not too seriously. It's not the be all and end all. And whilst I would have liked to have made the distance to London, the weather wasn't on my side. So I thank all my sponsors. I've had huge support throughout the event, with people sending me messages. So that side of things has been fantastic. I felt so supported from friends in club, that's at Fairwater, Mynith D, family, friends, people have come out of the woodwork, old TAC running club members have come out and sponsored me and sent me lovely messages. So thank you everyone who's given me massive support during this, and let's see what holds for the future.